Our affiliates can pick us up. There we go. The gorgeous Christy Bergeron and Bassmaster have arrived. Infinity Center, welcome to the channel for the first time. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Jose. How you doing? Mark Rademacher, how you doing? Uncle Dale and his Power Stash are here. Remember, if you're in Austin, Texas, go find Uncle Dale, rub his Power Stash for 14 days. Good luck. Awesome Annie Svensson, good to see you. Steve Stockton from KPNL, much love, my friend. How you doing, buddy? Christopher Morales, Rich Hilke, good to see you guys. And Michael Lestuca, thanks for coming on in. Project Blue Book, always a pleasure to have you here, as we are 20-some seconds to go here before we bring on Mike Ricksecker. George Hernandez, good to see you, my friend. Grandmaster, thanks for coming on in. And who else do we got here? Oh, we're caught up. We are caught up. There's our guest tonight, Mike Ricksecker. Look at his hair. Look how good his hair looks tonight. Bombshell Bomber, good to see you. And don't forget, if you're brand new here, hit that subscribe button. We're going to get going here in about 3 seconds. So let's have some fun tonight, everyone. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a great guest for you tonight. Mike Ricksecker is the author of numerous books, including A Walk in the Shadows, A Complete Guide to Shadow People, the historic paranormal books, Ghosts of Maryland and Ghosts and Legends of Oklahoma, Campfire Tales, and so many more. He has appeared on multiple television shows, but his biggest one so far, at least to me, has been the Travel Channel's The Alaskan Triangle, which is what we are talking about tonight. Missing people, UFOs, Bigfoot, other weird, strange phenomena happening in this strange triangle that goes right through Alaska and even into the Yukon and the Klondike of Canada. Mike's website is hauntedroadmedia.com. I specifically suggest you guys check that out because he is one of the most talented people in this field. Mike, thank you so much again for being a friend of Spaced Out Radios and coming on with us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me back, Dave. Always a pleasure being on your show.
I got to ask you, man, I know we only had you on a couple of months ago to talk about shadow people and everything, but you are someone who, you remind me of a David Weatherly or a Timothy Renner or somebody of that ilk, where you literally don't have a set focus on what you are investigating. You are someone who looks at the entire phenomena rather than just pieces. Sure, people know you as a ghost hunter and looking into a lot of haunted and strange cases, but I think you're much more than that. Why do you look at the entire picture rather than just going with one central focus?
Well, I think you have to. You know, all these different phenomena are connected. The entire universe is connected, which is why I have my latest project, The Connected Universe, in the connecteduniverseportal.com. But all this phenomena is related to each other somehow, some way. And so, yeah, I did a lot with, paranormal investigations, named me the Ghostorian, which is a title that I've used for a long time. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg, and I think a lot of people can kind of, use that as a catalyst, as something to kind of introduce them to, the deeper aspects of what's going on in this world, the more, esoteric knowledge that's out there. Ghosts and hauntings and all that is really just a prelude to all of those deeper topics, and that's really what I'm trying to get to the heart of, and it could be related to ETs and extraterrestrials. We see a lot of this phenomena back in our ancient civilization. So I was just out there in Egypt taking a look at all of that, which was absolutely amazing. And, there's a lot of mysteries to uncover here. And, we're just getting a glimpse of some of those answers.
For you, what is the quest? What is the drive for this, Mike?
It's that lost knowledge. What happened, early on before our recorded history? Is there a way to really discover that? Because there's, I like how Graham Hancock terms it, where he says, we are a people with amnesia, that there's something that happened in our distant past that we've forgotten about that really defined the early stages of our humanity. And, what exactly was that? Did these lost civilizations have technology, and I don't necessarily mean like computers and all that, but a type of technology that allowed them to access other states of consciousness, perhaps even Stargate technology to take them to other planets, other solar systems. Were we connected to? A lot of people point to the constellation of Orion and Sirius. Did we have a way to access that? Are we originally from there? I've been fascinated about Atlantis for a long time as well. What are the secrets behind that? Did all these lost civilizations stem from there? And we see, even with our legends of when we look at ghosts and hauntings and a lot of those customs and belief systems that are in place surrounding all of that, it almost doesn't matter which culture it actually stems from. There are seeds of knowledge that are embedded in there that seem to all harken back to the same thing. They may call it something different. There may be different terms and different legends and lore surrounding all of it, but it seems like the root of it, those nuggets of truth are similar throughout all of these cultures.
For sure. Now, Mike, you have covered everything from UFOs to ghosts to historic sites and everything in between. Do you have a favorite subject that you haven't written about yet?
There's so much that it's almost like I'm pulled in so many different directions. To say one is necessarily a favorite. Time travel, I love talking about time travel.
Me too.
And I was just speaking about that earlier this evening on my Connecting the Universe interactive class. And so that is... I kind of briefly touch on it in some of my current works, like A Walk in the Shadows. I have a very brief section on that. But that's going to be getting a bigger spotlight here in some of my upcoming work.
I want to ask you about that. Let's go down that angle for a quick second here, if you don't mind, because time travel absolutely fascinates me. And, there's two things I often wonder regarding this show. Number one, when I look at my chat rooms on YouTube, we get anywhere from 100 to a couple hundred people in there. And I always wonder, is someone famous listening in, but using an alias? Because that would be really cool if somebody famous was actually, looking at the show. Movie star, rock star, athlete, whatever it may be. But number two is, do we ever have time travelers in here? Like real time travelers? Do you think that on this planet right now, on our timeline where we exist, that there is potentially time travelers walking around?
I do believe so, and it really, because I believe there's a couple different aspects of time travelers. We have those time travelers that are almost like time slips, where those accidental moments when two different points in time bleed into each other, like when we get a glimpse of the past, or we might even get a glimpse of the future, and they almost see us as the ghosts, like we see them as that. And so there are a lot of different recorded time slips that are out there. But as far as those that have traveled, from the future back to here and are, watching, observing, checking this out, I think that happens, and that could be, why we have different phenomena like the Mandela effect. did some of these time travelers go back to a certain point in time in the past and something got changed, and that's why we remember things a little bit differently? And when we actually look and examine, we're like, okay, that's not the way it was recorded in our history, but we remember it differently. So did a time traveler go back and accidentally interact with the world and change something? It's really fascinating to think about.
Have you ever had any time slips?
Possibly. So there's a story that I like to tell at it's a restaurant called Johnny V's in Muskogee, Oklahoma, in which there was a shadow that I witnessed that just darted across the room. And it seemed like when I walked into this room, it was the kitchen, it seemed like I scared it. And perhaps it saw me as the shadow or it saw me as the ghost. But when it darted across the room and it blew through, it sounded like, in any case, that it blew through this side door, which was just a little flimsy metal door that waiters and waitresses would use to carry food through. You could tap it with your finger and the thing would move. But you heard it slam into that door, and the door didn't move at all. So when I've written about this, when I've talked about this, I've always postulated the idea that this was something that was interdimensional, that on its plane of existence, it probably blew right through that door and into the dining room area. But I didn't see it on mine because I'm a different plane of existence. But while I talk about that from interdimensional means, it could have very well been a time slip in that I saw and interacted with something at a different moment in time within that restaurant, and in that brief moment, it saw me too, and again scared it, and it tried to blow. It just blew right through that door.
I got a couple of examples here of things that have happened to me. Way before I ever got into this, I was working in downtown Vancouver at the radio station, and the exact same intersection, once going west and once going east. I'm sitting at the red light. I watch the light turn green. I put my foot on the gas, and I start to head into the intersection, only to have horns honking at me because the light is red. And it happened once going west and once going east about 4 months later. It was the trippiest thing, man, that I've had happen while driving. Scary. It's scary when that happens.
Yeah, dangerous place to have that happen at.
Yeah. But, thankfully, nothing happened drastically. There was no accident or anything like that. And thankfully, there was no red light cameras there either, which is nice because I didn't get a ticket, which is good.
Well, that's good.
But the second time where you talk about whether or not they're seeing us on a dimension, we were doing a ghost tour a couple of years ago. There were 9 of us walking along the old Gold Rush Trail here. And we literally stopped, and we were surrounded. We started getting activity. 9 of us had, whether or not you believe in K2 meters, I don't really care. I think they do work. We had 9 of us there, and all 9 K2 meters were spiking at red. And here we are, trying to communicate. We found out that it was a Chinese man, Chinese woman, walking the Gold Rush Trail, going up to Barkerville here in British Columbia, which is a historic town where there was a large Chinese community that literally helped build British Columbia, and they were on their way there. And so after about 10-15 minutes of speaking with them, okay, and getting results on all 9 K2 meters, 8 or 9, one of the two, we literally said, okay, good night, goodbye. And yet the meters were still activated. And we couldn't figure out why the meters were still going on. Like we said goodbye, they could continue on their route. But here was the weird thing, and this is what tripped me out. I start walking down the path because all of a sudden I'm thinking, okay, it's not just 2 people. They're likely to have a horse or 2 and a buggy in order to carry their things across the land. Because at that time, the land was pretty rough. And
sure.
Mike, swear to God, I walk down the path, the K2 is still going off. I tell everybody to move off the path because they have a horse and trailers with them. And all of us watched our K2s as they passed through. When we moved, you could see the K2s going all of a sudden off, 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 off.
Oh, wow.
So that made me really, really believe that we weren't intercepting ghosts, we were intercepting a timeline.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. I've never had that type of interaction with the K2s before. I've had a number of things happen, but that's definitely different. That's pretty interesting.
That is very interesting. So for you, like getting back to the whole timeline and time travel thing, do you think then that if there are time travelers here, do you think they could upset? I mean, we always look to Back to the Future, what Doc says, that you can't just, mess with the timeline. You can't go find yourself because that could screw things up. I mean, look what happened with the sports manual. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And that was something I kind of forgot to mention during the class this evening, because that is something that comes up. And I was talking about, when you start messing with the timeline, I started talking about like the grandfather paradox, the bootstrap paradoxes, things like that. And I actually specifically mentioned, Back to the Future and how, because Marty had gone back in the past and disrupted his mother and father meeting, that, he was going to disappear. And, and could that possibly happen? I mean, maybe, I don't know. You hear different people talk about if you create a paradox like that, it's actually going to make the world blow up and things like that. And I think that people postulate that because the math doesn't work out, and a lot of our theories are stem from all these different mathematical formulas that they've come up. When we talk about things like the multiverse, you'll have quantum physicists that say, oh yes, we can mathematically show that multiverse is possible, but to actually physically show it, we haven't been able to do that yet. So we have a lot of this that's rooted in mathematics, and so when you start talking about time travel and people coming from the future back to the past, playing around with the timeline, it just does not compute mathematically. So what happens? And so you say, okay, we're going to the universe is going to explode if we create one of these paradoxes. And I don't necessarily believe that's the case. I think that somebody could come from the future, manipulate what's happening now. That'll change things on us, but I think it does become more of like the Mandela effect thing, where we'll have this memory in our minds, even though the physical proof we see today looks different because something got changed, but our consciousness still somewhere in there recalls what happened in a previous timeline.
That makes sense. Mike, do you think then that people who claim to see these dinosaurs, whether they're thunderbirds or pterodactyls or even these Tyrannosaurus rexes, these mini Tyrannosauruses or raptors that are running around Texas, or maybe sea monsters like the Loch Ness Monster or Ogopogo or Champ, are maybe seeing into a previous timeline?
Yeah, that's always possible. Yeah, I've heard reports like that. Is that how people are seeing the Bigfoot sightings? Is there some sort of time slip that's happening at that moment, and they're able to see something like Bigfoot or some of these other different cryptids? That's always a possibility too. I mean, we know it happens, and one of my favorite time slip stories happens to be at the Conjuring House. We covered that in the Shadow Dimension docuseries. Please watch that free on Tubi TV. But it's where Andrea Perrin and her mother saw this. Basically, it was a family from the 1700s just all of a sudden morphed into their dining room. The wife is cooking over the fire. The children are playing around. There's a couple of men sitting at a table, and they turn and they look at Andrea and her mother Carolyn and say, "Well, would you look at that? Like Andrea and Carolyn are the ghosts." And the image ended up fading away, but that house is charged. There's an energy there. You have this open well in the basement. Water is inside of that. The walls are made of limestone capped with granite blocks. So it's like this little electric chamber, this little power plant that's there. So do you have these different locations around the earth that are charged with energy like that? We talk about ley lines and telluric currents and these nodes that are able to cross and produce energy like this. Is that happening at these different locations in causing these various time slips for us to see into the distant past, or maybe sometimes we're even seeing into the distant future, and that's why we're seeing some of these unusual craft too.
Though, I just think, though, that a lot of these dinosaur sightings that people claim, I mean, it would be nothing. Like, you take the Thunderbird, for instance, that a lot of people have claimed to see. A 40-foot bird, number one, would show up on radar. Number two, even more disgusting, is it would leave one hell of a big dropping. It really would. Like
you would
see cars repainted, trees repainted, houses repainted, fishermen repainted, because birds always seem to poop on fishermen. You would see all of this, and yet we don't.
Yeah. What happens with with the waste like that? I don't know. What's interesting is, since you mentioned Thunderbirds, kind of the reverse of that, and since we're going to be talking about the Alaska Triangle tonight, one of the stories that we covered for the Alaska Triangle was a missing Douglas Skymaster airplane back in 1950. And one of the ideas of how this airplane went missing was, did a portal to another dimension or another place in space-time, did that open up and basically swallow this thing? Because there's no wreckage, nothing was ever found of this thing. So if that's true, if it did disappear into a portal, the question becomes, where did it go? And one of the possibilities is that it went to another place in time. So let's say it went back in time 500 years. Well, 500 years ago, if the natives in the area suddenly see this airplane flying overhead, well, they have no context of an airplane. They're going to think it's some sort of giant bird with large wingspans that's very loud, which is everything that you hear and read about in the Thunderbird legends. So were some of these old Thunderbird legends actually sightings of our modern airplanes that just happen to come through, some sort of, whether they actually physically ended up there through a portal, or was it some sort of time slip where they just briefly saw that airplane for a moment?
Oh, goodness, I don't know. I really don't know, as we got about just over 90 seconds here before we have to go to break at the top of the hour, or at the bottom of the hour, pardon me. Mike Ricksecker is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to be heading into the Alaskan Triangle. Mike, we could carry this over right through to the break here, but what makes Alaska so special?
Oh, they call it the last frontier, and it really is. People don't realize how extensively massive it is. I mean, it's like 2.5 times the size of Texas, and a lot of it is really uncharted and unexplored. There are pockets up there that people just they seriously have no idea what's there, and so it's become a haven for all these different legends and lore. It's a very mysterious location.
It's also a location that the majority of the population is within, I believe, less than 50 miles of the ocean. And there's not much in between.
Right, yeah. I mean, the population's going to stay near the water. That's where they've made so much of their livelihood with the fishing industry, and then of course the shipping and trying to get around the islands there. So it's mostly on the water. You have very few things inland. I mean, Fairbanks, and that's kind of about it. So it leaves a lot to chance in between.
All right, Mike, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Author, Ghostorian, television star, the great-haired Mike Ricksecker is here on Spaced Out Radio tonight, where we are going to be talking about the Alaskan Triangle. What is really going on there? Do we need another triangle in this world? Apparently we do, because this one is weird. Bigfoot, UFOs, aliens, any type of cryptid creature in between, ghosts. The Triangle has it all. We're going to get into it with Mike Ricksecker next on Spaced Out Radio. His website is hauntedroadmedia.com. Check it on out. We'll be back right after this message. All right, we're clear.
All right. How much time do we have?
We have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, take a break.
Yep.
All right, who am I missing here? Hey, Misfits, how you doing? Good to see you. Vinster, what's going on, buddy? Disciple Will, nice to have you here. So apparently there's another forest fire burning here. Honestly, it's getting hard to breathe. It really sucks here right now. Hey, little Deborah. How you doing? Morning, Jim Morris. How you doing, buddy? And, there's Bigfoot Michigan Rob. Best he can do is $3. I'm Chad Smith, by the way. Uh-huh. Well, that's nice. Well, let's go close that window. Let's go here. Sorry if I'm quiet. I'm just trying to get an update on this latest forest fire, if there is any. There's a nice satellite image of everything that's burned. Yeah. What really sucks is the fire is... Hey, Travis DeLuca, how you doing, man? Let's see who else is here. The gorgeous Magic Maiden. The stunning and talented Pam McSee. Stu Gerson, everyone. Right there. The gorgeous Jessica McCreary. She'll be giving hair tips after the show. I'll be taking in that class. And she's like, shut up, Dave. Shut up. Don Doyen, welcome to Spaced Out Radio in our chat room. Thank you. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We are on commercial break. Ed Parnell, good to see you, my friend. Thanks for coming on in. The gorgeous and talented Anne Celine with another amazing super chat. And we love Anne Celine around here. Michael Lestuca, nice to have you here, buddy. Michael, if you think it's bad in Manitoba, try living like 15 miles from it, or 20 kilometers. That sucks. Not gonna lie. It sucks. There's Mike Ricksecker right there. Always wearing a nice black blazer. This man could go to the beach, and he'll have his blazer on, and he'll have a blazer tan on afterwards. Waylon, what's going on? I'll see if I can show you a picture here. 1 second here. Just close these off. I'm going to quickly share my screen here and show everybody. Share screen. Let's go full here on this. So if you look here, this big black spot here,
yeah,
that's all fire.
Wow.
That's all burned area. This is my town right here. And I live...
Yeah, you're not far.
I live like right up... let's see, where am I? I'm like right... No, that's Lac-La-Hache. So I'm about right here. Right there is where I live. Right there.
Yeah, that's not too far at all.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, be safe, my friend.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean that's. I wish I could see if I could zoom in. No, they're not going to let me zoom in on that. But yeah, that's pretty insane right now. Pretty insane. There we go. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, that's nothing to joke around about.
No,
that's for sure.
Not at all. Aaron, how you doing? Chad Smith. I'm Chad Smith. And I don't know how that became a joke, but it has. And a big thank you to Ann ×2, Snakes, Dave, Sally, and Ed for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Thank you to all of our new subscribers. Thank you so much for hitting that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. And to all the veterans out there who tuned on in, we love you, and thank you for letting us be a part of your evening. All right, we'll get going here in 5 seconds, Mike. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. From HauntedRoadMedia.com, Mike Ricksecker is here. He's one of the top paranormal supernatural authors going on this planet, I believe. I will say this planet because I think you're that damn good, Mike. I really do. But we're talking the Alaskan Triangle today. Hey, I'm allowed to say that, Mike. You can't get upset with me about that.
No, not upset at all. I appreciate it.
Just making sure. Just making sure. Because I felt that eye roll, by the way. I felt that eye roll.
No, I was just, hoping, because I want to, expand out a little bit. So, my goal is to become the best author on Pluto.
I agree. I agree. Although, now, after Neil deGrasse Tyson and the boys and girls, made it a dwarf planet, I'm not happy about that. I'm still pissed.
No, not at all. I get the whole idea of, of its size, and if we made Pluto a regular planet, we'd have to make all these others. No, you don't have to. There's a thing that we do with everything else. You just grandfather Pluto into it being a planet, and all the others you can call dwarf planets.
I agree with you. I totally agree with that. All right, Alaskan Triangle. You did a great television series on it with the Travel Channel and a number of great people whom you worked around, including a good friend of this show, Johnny Enoch. And I want to talk about what this triangle is. So take some time to explain for our audience, what is the Alaskan Triangle?
Yeah, the Alaska Triangle, basically it's a large area of land. You could draw a triangle basically from Juneau to Anchorage up to what was known as Barrow. They've changed it back to a native Alaskan name, and I cannot pronounce it, but basically Barrow at the very north, and then back down to Juneau. And basically this triangle area works a lot like when you think of like the Bermuda Triangle. In fact, many people will refer to it as Alaska's Bermuda Triangle, which is kind of funny, but there are a number of these different triangle areas around the world in which you have strange activity happen, where you have the missing like the missing airplanes, the missing ships, the strange sightings of whether it's sea creatures or cryptids, Bigfoot, that sort of thing, UFO sightings, all kinds of paranormal activity. There are a lot of strange things that happen in these triangle areas. And with Alaska, this one is, the size of it is absolutely massive. And you have, especially with the disappearances, since 1988, 16,000 people have gone missing. And yeah, sure, some of them are the legit missing people, but it's an extreme number, and some of them just don't make any sense, especially with different things like the airplanes that have just disappeared into nothing.
Now we're talking just vanishing. I mean, this is straight out of David Paulides' Missing 411. 16,000 people in 30 years. I mean, why isn't there more press on this? Why isn't there more coverage on this?
I mean, there are for some of the bigger cases, like in the 1970s, when you had Speaker of the House Hale Boggs, along with the congressman there in Alaska, Nick Begich. They went missing in an airplane, along with, of course, the pilot, Don Johns. That one got a lot of press because, of course, it was the Speaker of the House. So cases like that will definitely get some press, but some of the smaller cases, I think it's almost because it's such a remote location. Unless something big happens up there, we down in what they call the lower 48 don't really hear about it. I just think it's the remoteness of Alaska that we kind of forget about it. But there's a lot that goes on up there that we shouldn't pay a blind eye to. We should pay more attention.
Mike, there's always logic that goes behind a lot of these missing people, these weird, strange phenomena where people just vanish. When you're in tough terrain like Alaska, and even where I live in northern British Columbia, where there is a lot of open area that there's not even roads to, all right, and mountainsides and deep bogs that the moose love to live around. I mean, we're talking a lot of wilderness here. How many of these areas do you think or these missing people or missing planes are just people who do not understand the terrain, or maybe get caught up because the weather can change so quickly?
Yeah, that can certainly happen. Some of these are certainly going to be legitimate cases, and you hear about people that do get rescued or find their way back, and they explain that I had just gone off the trail for a second. I thought I saw something there, and then they try to get back on the trail, and somehow, some way, they just completely lose it. They lose track, even though they'd only been off the trail for like a minute or had not gone too far, and all of a sudden they're trapped out in the woods for a week or two, and so you do get people that come back and say, "This is what happened to me." The missing airplanes is a little bit harder to really excuse. I mean, ones that get trapped into weather, okay, fine, but with that plane that we already talked about. With Hale Boggs, the pilot Don Johns, he was a seasoned pilot. He had been making those flights for a long, long time, so he knew the air there really well. The other one we already mentioned, the Douglas Skymaster in 1950. It was a relatively clear day. There was no nasty weather, and they were just making a routine flight. And all of a sudden, poof, the whole thing went missing. So some of them are a little bit harder to explain, while yeah, some of them are going to be just legitimate, straight-up missing persons cases.
That's intriguing for that. I mean, these planes have beacons. They have radar. They have signals in case they get into an SOS-type situation. Nothing's been heard from these?
No. There's a handful where they cannot find them at all. What happened to them, where'd they go? Now, back in the day, we didn't have the black boxes. We have that now. So, like the 1950 Skymaster, you're not going to have a black box in that. But what's really interesting about that particular case is a couple weeks later, there was a smaller plane around the same area where they lost contact with that Skymaster that went down. The crew was okay, but they found that plane immediately. There was no problem in trying to locate it. So, why is it they had such a harder time trying to find this huge plane where, the smaller one was not a problem? So things like that are, very strange.
So for you, what do you think is going on here?
There's a lot of different things that could be going on up there. I think it has a lot to do with the electromagnetic activity that's going on up there. It's a very volatile area to begin with, so people don't really realize it. But there was, although maybe somebody caught the news I think it was last week. It was an 8.2 earthquake that was out in the ocean. So there were some tsunami warnings. Nothing really came of that, but very volatile as far as the land. So you have a lot of earthquakes up there. There's volcanic activity up there. When I was stationed up in Alaska for 3 years, from 1992 to 95. When I stepped off the airplane, there was still ash falling from the sky because there had been a recent eruption from Mount Spur in the area. So it's like that was my first introduction to Alaska. Snow on the ground and ash falling from the sky. It was crazy. And then a couple months later, we had a 6.5 magnitude earthquake, which where I was located, it sounded like a cannon going off. That was kind of crazy. And another bizarre thing that happened within the first few months of me being stationed up there was an airplane that was taking off from the Anchorage airport, and the engine just fell right off the plane. And so they had to turn around and head back to the airport. It crashed into a supermarket parking lot. Somehow nobody got hurt, which was amazing. But it's just, these sudden things when I first got up there, boom, boom, boom. And it's like, okay, there are bizarre things that happen up here. And I think a lot of it, like I said, has to do with just the volatility of the area. You have all this, geological upheaval. It's also getting pelted with, people are familiar with the aurora borealis, but, what is that? Well, that's the solar wind coming from the sun. All these electrons and protons and electrons that are coming from the sun at that area at the top of the earth, it's not as well protected. So it hits the ionosphere up there. You have the protons and electrons that are interacting with that because it's thinner. We see this interaction that occurs up there. And so, any significant solar wind that occurs and hits that area, you're going to have a more electrically charged atmosphere. So you have all of these different conditions that are creating this environment where it's almost like anything goes.
What do the locals say about all of this?
They have a lot of different legends and lore, of course, especially when it comes to a number of the different cryptid sightings. When it comes to the earthquakes, it's almost like, kind of almost like, Californians have that, when it's a smaller earthquake, they're like, that was nothing. So that's kind of their take on the earthquakes up there. But especially the, native Alaskan legends, they have their, the different, I don't want to call them deities, but basically, they're different creatures or different legends up there of what is interacting with the landscape, is interacting with the people. So you have a lot of that. It makes it for a much more mysterious location. A lot of people attribute the activity up there to UFOs and extraterrestrials, which are a lot of UFO sightings up there as well. And, being on Elmendorf Air Force Base, there was, some talk and some discussion. I wasn't privy to anything like that there. But, something I got asked about a lot up there, are you involved with anything with the UFOs there? It's like, no, I'm not. But people talked about it.
Oh, what were they saying, Mike?
Oh, I mean, that they existed, of course. I mean, like I said, I wasn't involved with it, but, people were seeing things in the sky. And so I'd get asked, different questions. Mostly with me, I didn't see much of the sky because I was in the basement of the Alaska Command Building most of the time in a secure facility. So, there were no windows down there, so I didn't see much of that. But people asked questions.
Oh, very true, very true. Mike Ricksecker is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Mike, before we get into the cryptid talk, and I want to get into that next half hours, a lot of those legends, but I look at it too. Like a couple weeks ago, there was a story about a gentleman who literally for 5-6 days was fighting off a grizzly bear that was trying to kill him at his cabin. The bear had ripped off the door. It would come in and attack at night. And, during the day, the bear would wander off. It had dragged him down to the creek below a couple of times, but he was able to get away. He was down to 2 rounds until, miraculously, a Coast Guard helicopter just happened to be flying over, and he had a big "Help Me" sign in painted rocks that he had put on his roof. I mean, how many of these people that go vanishing, are out there looking for that next gold prospect, or they're looking for, that trophy moose or that trophy animal because they're hunters, and they just fall to prey because out in the wilderness like that, man is not the top of the food chain.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly cases like that. People like to hunt up there or go fishing, and they could be along a stream or what have you, and end up in front of the wrong kind of animal. And that can even happen in town. When I was up there, there was somebody who had gotten attacked. Coming out of the library at the college up there, there was a moose and her calf. And apparently the moose thought that this person, completely oblivious that there were a moose there, just walking out of the library, and the moose thought it was too close to the calf, or thought the guy was too close to the calf, and attacked. I was, for me, I was getting picked up by my ex-wife one evening. I was working a second job, and we're driving home down kind of a main strip. It was DeBarra Road, which kind of connected the one part of the city to downtown, 4-lane road. And there's this moose standing in the middle of the road, and my ex was just talking to me, and it's kind of a funny story because we're getting closer and closer to this moose, and it's like she didn't see it, and I kind of turned to her and I'm like, are you gonna try to miss the moose? And all of a sudden she slams on her brakes. It was the middle of winter, so there's ice. She does a 180 into a snowbank, and the moose went running off. But they are all over the place. So if you get out in the wilderness, you're going to have a lot more of that type of interaction. So you do have to be careful.
And nobody, unless you've been around moose, you don't realize how big they are.
Oh yeah, they're absolutely massive. They will. You hit one with your car, you're going to total your car.
Yeah,
they're massive.
I have seen accidents up here where moose versus like even an F-350 Ford Super Duty truck, and that truck is totaled, yep. And it's amazing. Like when you hit an animal that's 1,800, 2,000 pounds of solid muscle and very fine tasting meat, by the way. you were literally driving right into a brick wall.
Yeah, those animals are no joke. You have to be really careful.
And they're dumb. They are dumb. They just don't move. They don't want to. But let's get to back to the airplanes that are disappearing for a second. Mm-hmm. On average, how many airplanes a year go missing?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, I don't remember the number. I remember the number for the people. There's about 50 UFO sightings per year up there. The missing airplanes. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, Dave.
Okay, but either way,
it's above average. It's been a lot. Yeah.
Now, are we just talking little Piper Cubs, or are we talking airliners like Learjets, or is this all private flight that seems to be going missing?
It's a mixture of both. I mean, we haven't had one like like one of your big commercial civilian airliners go missing up there in a long, long time. So a lot of them have been private jets, but military planes have gone missing up there, in some of the bigger ones. So it's a mix. Oh
man, could you imagine what that pilot is seeing? I mean, especially if it's military. There's all sorts of ways to try and track a military aircraft. And if they are just vanishing, there's got to be some what the hell going on up there, whether it's at Elmendorf Air Force Base or Fairbanks.
Yeah, because all of a sudden they just disappear off the radar. In the last radio transmission, everything seemed fine. There was no, in a lot of these, there's no distress call. And all of a sudden they're just gone. So the only thing they can do is go to the last location of their transmission, the last location where they had them on radar, and take a look around and see where they may be, and they're just they're not finding them, and it's not like they had a half dozen guys looking around. In a lot of these investigations, there were millions of dollars spent, thousands of people that are out there looking for them, and not a trace.
So, with 4 minutes to go here, what do you think's happening to these airplanes? Are they running out of fuel, or are they just flying into the oblivion that we don't know?
Yeah, they're not going to be running out of fuel because they're prepared for these flights. They're not getting caught up in weather where they have to keep flying around until they can land. They're well prepared as far as fuel. Some of them, just seemingly fly off into in oblivion. Are they getting trapped into some sort of portal? We don't know. Interesting stories you hear with the UFOs. Excuse me. Like the 1986 flight with the Japanese Airlines, where they were being tracked by a UFO up there, and so some of the ideas are did a UFO take the airplane somehow? So there are those types of speculations as well.
I know you don't like to speculate, but what does Mike Ricksecker believe?
Well, I like the idea of the of like that missing Douglas Skymaster getting or finding itself through a portal, through that tunnel. We've seen, like with Bruce Gernon down in the Bermuda Triangle, where he got trapped in one of these portals, but came out on the other side. Now somehow he traveled 100 miles in 3 minutes, and from somewhere out there in the Atlantic ended up by Miami, far sooner than he was supposed to be. So does something like that happen with the Douglas Skymaster? It's possible. I like the idea of like I was talking about earlier with the Thunderbirds, that's where some of these legends came from. Another thing with that Douglas Skymaster is that they did pick up some strange radio chatter not long after. Even though they could not find this airplane, so they don't know for sure whether that chatter came from those missing from the Douglas, because it was kind of indiscernible. But we've seen in other cases where when we've seen things like time slips or something happening interdimensionally, where we may get some feedback via audio, where the visual aspect of it is not quite coherent. We're still getting audio back because it works on a different frequency. We're getting that back through the portal, and so we're able to hear it. So is that what was happening with that radio chatter that could have been from that Douglas Skymaster? It's a possibility.
We got a minute to go here. In next half hour, we're going to get into the cryptid side of everything. But looking at the map of this, it seems to also run into Canada. Has a lot of these incidents happened in the Yukon of Canada as well?
Yeah, some of them have. In fact, where they were looking for that Douglas Skymaster was near Snag in Canada. So it was just over the Canadian border where they had their last transmission from them, or last blip on the radar. So, yeah, some of these things do happen on the Canada side of it. There's some different Klondike stories. Some of the missing or some of the boat tragedies have happened in association with the Klondike area, which is kind of interesting to think about. And also another interesting airplane incident was one that actually, it's a broken arrow, so a nuclear warhead that's dropped there in the Pacific Ocean somewhere, but out of nowhere, this plane, as it was coming south through that Alaska Triangle area, a military airplane suddenly just stopped working. The crew had to bail out. The plane actually ended up crashing into a mountain in British Columbia. Only a handful of the crew were found, and there's still a nuclear warhead out in the ocean somewhere.
I have heard that story. Mike Ricksecker, Haunted Road Media, Alaskan Triangle Talk, continues right after this with hour number 2. Make sure you check his website out. Go online to buy all his books. They're fantastic. We'll be back right after this. All right, my friend, I'm just going to run my dogs out. I'll be right back. We got 6 minutes, okay?
All right, sounds good.
All right, bud. Be right back, people. Be right back. I'm Chad Smith. All right. Right back here. And push those up so I can see. There's Mike Ricksecker, and I'm here too. Great show so far, Mike.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We'll bring in some audience questions too. I'm just getting caught up in the chat room here.
Yeah, if there is UFO stuff you want to talk about, that's fine. I didn't have any personal experiences up there. I mean, there's a little chatter around the base, but I mean, there are definitely UFO legends up there.
For sure. Hello, gorgeous Nicole Malott. The stunning and talented Jessica Lee has returned. Chad Smith. I am Chad Smith. And, Nicole, sorry. You're Chad Smith. Okay. Let's see. Fap is also Chad Smith. Raul, how you doing? My goodness, chat room is bopping tonight. Bim Jim, how are you, man? And here we go with hour 2, everyone.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Thank you to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. All you got to do is go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam is set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Sacralgia. Sacralgia is your password. Probably pronounced that wrong, but the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight from HauntedRoadMedia.com. Mike Ricksecker, one of the top paranormal supernatural authors out there right now, and he was also one of the stars of the Travel Channel's Alaskan Triangle, which we are talking about tonight. Mike, welcome back.
Thanks again, Dave. I always have a great time on your show. You ask some great questions. We get into some fantastic topics.
It is a lot of fun, and it's the guest who makes the fun. That is for sure, and you're one of the good guys in this field, which is why we love having you here. You know, before we get going too much into the cryptid side of Alaska, Jenny has a question from our chat room. She's asking, Mike, is it possible some of these missing planes landed into volcanoes?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I suppose it's always a possibility. You know, if it's one that's active, of course they're going to be monitoring something like that, so then they would, you know, be able to see that go in. But could it have landed into like an old caldera? I suppose it's always possible. One of the things that they talk about that's always a possibility for some of these missing airplanes is a lot of these glaciers up there. They have those large crevasses that, you know, extend down to great depths. So if one of those planes ended up down one of those crevasses, it would be very difficult to know that it's down there. So there are definitely some nooks and crannies up there in Alaska that some of these could slip into, and you never find them.
All right, another question from Vinny. Were you ever, or did you ever see the videos of a black object in front of the sun in Alaska?
I have not seen the videos. I've heard about that. You know, what's interesting about Alaska is you hear these stories about, you know, black this and black that. There's, you know, the Black Pyramid in Alaska and things like that. So, I haven't seen those videos. But the other thing that you get up there in Alaska are like the strange trumpets the sound of the trumpets that come out of nowhere. So it's a bizarre area.
Do you think the Northern Lights play a role in this?
Well, that's what I was talking about with the Aurora Borealis before. When you see the Northern Lights, when you see the Aurora Borealis, those are going to be times of high energy, especially when it's bright. You get a lot of the different colors, like the blues and greens are a little bit more mild. When it's red, that's a little bit of a more rare color that you see out of the Northern Lights. That's when you know that you're getting that strong electrical charge, and that plays a lot into this activity. When we talk about supernatural paranormal activity, a lot of these strange like UFO sightings and cryptids, they seem to happen around these times of these strong electrical charges. So when you're seeing that out of the Northern Lights, and you can kind of expect something strange is going to be happening, kind of like down here in the lower 48 when we have a thunderstorm roll through, people report a lot more heightened paranormal activity after that, and I've seen that for myself as well.
All right, one more question here before we get into the cryptids. This one comes from Ann. What one cryptid would you never want to see, and what one would you really want to see?
Wow, that's a interesting question. Well, of course, I would want to see a Sasquatch, and preferably not blurry, just to say, hey, I finally saw one. But as far as which one I would not want to see, I don't know, probably something like maybe the Dogman or Chupacabra or whatever. Some of those just sound kind of ferocious, and I might not want to mess with one.
I'm the same way. I want to see Bigfoot again. When I saw the two Sasquatch, I think I was so immature in my way of thinking regarding these creatures that I'd love to have that experience again. I know what it's like to hear them, and unfortunately, that area right now is under fire. So now I got to go find a whole new Bigfoot area up here in British Columbia. But I would love to see another Sasquatch for sure, or a Thunderbird. I would not want to find one of these pterodactyls. As cool as it would be to see these pterodactyls, if you go into northern British Columbia, into Alaska, a lot of the First Nations believe that a lot of their people go missing by these pterodactyls that pick them up and eat them for food. And I really don't want to be a part of that because I'm a meal. Megalodon, too.
Yeah, a pterodactyl snack is not how I would want to go out. What's also interesting about Alaska is there are people that believe there may still be some living woolly mammoths up there, that there may be some isolated pockets because, the land is so vast and extensive up there that there is a possibility there are still some living woolly mammoth up there. So I'd love to see one of those if there are some still alive.
Where are they apparently seeing these?
Well, and that's the thing. They're not necessarily seeing them. It's just the idea that there could possibly be some up there, because there are still areas up there that have not really been explored. So if there definitely were woolly mammoths up there. They've come across those fossils. They have come across just frozen carcasses in the ice where the meat is still there on the bones, which is pretty fascinating to think about. So given that they still have essentially fresh woolly mammoths that they're pulling up out of the ice, there's the idea that's been proliferated that there could be still some small isolated pockets up there.
They believe that in Russia too.
They believe that in Russia too, yeah, because they have vast wilderness there as well.
All right, Mike Ricksecker is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Let's get into the cryptid side of everything, because the more north you go, the bigger everything gets. Like if you were to take a moose from my area and take one of them giant Alaskan mooses, they're almost double the size. Grizzly bears are much larger. The Kodiaks, if you think about them, there's polar bears that walk across, all across the Arctic, in the Arctic Circle around there, which get up to 2,000, 3,000 pounds. We're dealing with some major animals up there. I've even heard from a lot of First Nations people that the Sasquatch that are seen in that area near the Alaskan border, near the Yukon border into British Columbia, are around 12 to 15 feet tall, not the 7 to 8 footers that we seem to report around Washington State and British Columbia and Oregon, California. So everything seems to get a little bit larger the more north we go. So what kind of cryptids are you hearing from your investigations there?
Yeah, you're right about that. The animals are definitely bigger up there. When I drove out of Alaska, which was pretty crazy, especially with how young I was at the time, and it was the start of the winter season, and we did it in a geoprism. I don't recommend doing that. Dude. Yeah, it was nuts, and we were following a snowstorm all the way out. But I was actually blessed on that trip where we're coming down off this ridge. I have no idea where in Alaska we were at the time. We may have been lost. I don't know. The storm had kind of cleared for a moment, so the moon was glistening off of the new fallen snow. And there at the bottom of the ridge, in like this little valley, was this herd of caribou, and they're all over the road. I just kind of like drove slowly as I got up. They're huge. They were these massive caribou, but they parted like water as I just kind of slowly inched my way through. It was absolutely beautiful. But yeah, they were huge. For cryptids up there, you of course hear about the thunderbirds. The Lake Iliamna monster is really fascinating because they do have some video footage of this thing, and I mean. The footage that they captured essentially looks like a really long snake, but they basically call this like the Loch Ness Monster of Alaska. It's truly fascinating that to think that there could be something that came from the ocean that ended up getting locked into this area, and there's a possibility it could still be getting out to the more open waters as well, kind of underneath the ice. But that was something that was featured on the Alaska Triangle television show, was that footage. So I definitely recommend taking a look at that and viewing it, because that's some compelling work that they've done up there with that.
Do you think a lot of these creatures, like Sasquatch, are responsible for a number of the missing people?
I mean, that's always a possibility, especially some of the more fierce type of cryptids. Sasquatch, I mean, that's, people have a lot of different opinions about Sasquatch as to whether, some are more ferocious or more docile. So you just have these really mixed reports about Sasquatch. Now, the sightings up there and the imprints that they found, I mean, these things are going to be massive, 10, 15 feet tall, at least, is what you hear. So is there a possibility that, the Sasquatch are doing something to people up there, that, maybe they're, the disappearances are related to them? It's certainly possible. So when it comes to them, I just... because you hear of the more, docile, silent ones as well, I'm, kind of leaving that open for, at least as far as my mind. I'm leaving myself open on that as far as my opinion. But there are some of the more, like you were talking about with the pterodactyls and the large birds, those type of creatures. I'm sorry, I keep trying to think of the one. It's the large owl creature that they have there in Alaska that I'm trying to remember the name of, because it's a native term, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. But you hear about those sightings, and those are supposed to be more ferocious as well.
I'm hearing a lot about creatures. Apparently, there is an Alaskan tiger. Have you heard about that?
I've not heard of an Alaskan tiger. No,
it's called White Death, and apparently. It's like almost like a saber-toothed tiger. There's another creature called a saber wolf up there that apparently its jaws are so strong it could take off a person's head in one bite. I mean, this is some scary stuff, man, if this is true.
Yeah, if it's true, because there are stories that proliferate for sure. There is a strong wolf population there in Alaska, and again, like you said, they're larger too. So you do have to be very careful with the wolves up there. As far as like a saber-toothed wolf, I guess that's open for discussion.
Very sure, very sure. But, how much of this rides on the legends and the antiquated stories of the First Nations people up there? Because they are, the indigenous tribes have been up there surviving for thousands of years. Why, we don't know, but that's where they chose home. And, we look at it and, they're in tune so well with Mother Earth and nature and everything. The stories that they have about these incredible creatures just never seems to go away. How much did you study on the First Nations cultures up there?
Yeah, and you have to. That's a good question, and you have to take all of that into consideration. The indigenous tribes up there, they witnessed something for sure, and so you see that with any of our indigenous peoples around the continent is they have that tradition, that oral tradition that they've passed down, and a lot of people will try to discredit that with oral tradition things can get changed, somebody could embellish something. Kind of like the whole operator game that we played when we were kids in the classroom. And by the time the story got to the end, it was completely different. But the First Peoples will maintain that no, they were very meticulous with their storytelling. That when they passed that down, even though it was an oral tradition, they made sure and they were very responsible to keep the story exactly the same through all the years. And the problem with that is you have to take them at their word for that because there's nothing written down until in recent times where we've written down the stories that they've told. So I'd like to believe them. And talking with a lot of indigenous people, they seem so very honest to me. They are very in tune to their surroundings, and they are very proud of their culture. So. When they talk about seeing some of these different things, or they have a legend that's been passed down through the years, I like to believe that, okay, these people saw something and this is in their context for what they knew at the time, how they were able to interpret it. Now, whether the way they interpreted it was exactly what it was, that's still open for debate. Like I said earlier with the Thunderbirds, I believe it's possible that if some of these missing airplanes had actually, whether it was some sort of time slip or physically went back into time, and the natives there witnessed that, well, their interpretation is going to be of some enormous, loud bird spitting fire. Especially if it was an airplane that had suffered some sort of damage and was about to land and crash. So their context and their interpretation may be different than what it actually was, but like with all legend and lore, there's going to be some grain of truth in there, and it's a matter of trying to decipher what exactly that truth is.
Very true. Very true. As we got about 5.5 minutes before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour, Tony is asking a question here. Mike, do you have any more reports of Dogman or the Sauve, which cryptid is most common up there?
Yeah, there aren't too many Dogman reports up in Alaska. That seems to be more in this area of the country. We have some reports in Ohio, Wisconsin area, of course. Up in Alaska, not so much. That's more Thunderbird, Sasquatch. I can't remember what the name of that owl creature was. The pterodactyl stuff. The Chatham Hairy Man is pretty popular up there, and then some of these different sea creatures as well.
So not many dogman sightings, if any.
Not really a lot of dogman sightings up there, no. Unless that's changed over the last couple of years. But even then, because I've been doing a lot more research on this lately, because I am in the process of writing a book and, of course, a television show. Even then, I haven't heard too many reports.
Wow, that just amazed me. These owls that people are seeing now up in Nome, Alaska. There's the whole movie that was made about the fifth kind, about the owls actually being extraterrestrials, and a lot of people being taken in that community by alien abduction. Do you buy into that story? Do you think it's just Hollywood, or is there real reports of that happening?
Yeah, that what happened in Nome there is very interesting. It's very controversial. So many people deny that. Of course, the producers of that said that no, this was based on real events. We had some real footage in there. We recreated many aspects of it. So it's hard to know what was really true from that. Now, of course, there are a lot of reports of UFO sightings. There are reports of UFOs in that area. The owls kind of almost seem to be a universal thing. You see a lot of sightings of owls in these locations that have significant UFO sightings. So are the owls attracted to, because we talk about UFOs being attracted to the different electromagnetic anomalies around the Earth, like Skinwalker Ranch is one that's huge for that. It has all those electromagnetic anomalies, and you have all these UFO sightings. I mentioned the Conjuring House earlier that has this almost like a little power plant there in the basement. A lot of UFO sightings around there as well, and you have these owls that end up being reported there a lot in great numbers. So it seems like they're almost attracted to the same electromagnetic activity as the UFO sightings. So if Nome is having, whether they're natural owls or have something to do with UFOs, or extraterrestrials, if they're having a lot of these owl sightings there, then I buy into the idea that yes, there are a lot of UFOs there as well. Now, whether the movie was accurate or not, I don't know, but I do believe there's certainly extraterrestrial and UFO activity going on there in Nome.
Do you think there's a lot of aliens running around Alaska, much what we saw like in the movie Signs? Because, let's face it. A place like Alaska or northern Canada or even northern Russia, that would be an extraterrestrial's dream. If you're looking at
there's a lot more open space and they could run free.
Exactly.
And, I get what you're saying. Yeah, and they may feel more free there. Who would know, right? You have the like Mount Hayes, which is supposed to be a great alien base, and there are a lot of UFO sightings from Fort Greely, which is like 30 miles away. But that was a site that was remote viewed in originally. You don't hear reports of people seeing the ETs, but they're believed to be there, or the underwater bases, and there seems to be a lot of activity there in the water with UFOs. So, you could sit there and say that they should feel more free to kind of spread their wings in these more open areas. Then the idea would be to try to capture that, so we could prove that hypothesis.
Just under 90 seconds, and Vinny is asking, Mike, what do you think is piloting these UFOs?
I think it's a mixture of different things. Yes, I do think there are ETs that are piloting the UFOs. I think some of them are drones. They are, they're sent here to, scout. Like what we would do. We would send a probe to another planet, and if we knew that, or we wanted to investigate some other terrestrial planet, we would send a probe. And so I think some of these are unmanned, but I think some of them are manned as well.
Well, hopefully one day we'll find out. Probably not in the near future. But, it's one of those things where we're going to continue on. There's so much weird and strange happening in Alaska, from sea monsters to UFOs to extraterrestrials to cryptids. We're talking the Alaskan Triangle tonight with Mike Ricksecker, and I'll tell you, what a show so far. These mysteries absolutely intrigue me, because Well, they should intrigue all of us because there is strange things happening way north that the lower 48 and even us here along the border in Canada cannot seem to figure out, or that we are blind to because we don't pay attention. But does more happen in the north? Mike Ricksecker, HauntedRoadMedia.com is his website. Find all of his books on his website and online. He's one of the best researchers, reporters, authors out there in the paranormal supernatural realm. So check him out today. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio right after this. We're flying on by here, dude.
We are. It's going quick.
No kidding. That's 90 minutes already.
Yeah. Time flies by when you're having fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just looking at some of these legends here. My goodness. Sure. I mean, could you imagine coming across a saber-toothed tiger in Alaska?
Yeah, that would be pretty wild. Yeah, and I know that they had that stuff in the ancient past. Just these days, I have not heard of that as far as anything recent.
Where do you want to go next?
I mean, we could talk about some of the ghost ships.
Sure. We could totally do that. Give me 2 seconds here.
There it is.
There we go. Alan Hold, how are you? Hey, Duke, trying to find somebody to talk about the Nahanni Valley is difficult. We've been trying for a year to find somebody to talk about the Nahanni Valley. Have you heard about the Nahanni Valley, Mike?
I can't say that I have.
It's in Canada, up north, in the Yukon Northwest Territories, where there is a valley in there where a bunch of people went prospecting and looking for settlements and all this kind of stuff, just kind of searching all around, and all of their bodies were found with their heads ripped off.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is going back in the day. Way back in the day.
I remember the stories from some years back when like all the feet were washing up on shore. That was kind of crazy.
That, you know what? My buddy Bruce Claggett, who's been on the show, I worked with him in radio, and him and I had a very serious discussion about that one time, where he truly believes that there is a mass murderer in Vancouver who dumps his bodies in the Georgia Strait or the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and then, he ties them probably to cement blocks, and then as the fish and the crustaceans feed off the body, because the people still have runners or sneakers or dress shoes on, the feet, or pardon me, mainly sneakers or runners, that the fish don't go in there, because the runners now are so light they float with the current, and and that's how the feet are leaving the body, and that's why you only get a foot and you don't get the torso or anything like that, because that's all been eaten by fish and crabs and other crustaceans, right?
That would make sense, yeah.
But him believing that that there is only a serial killer or killers out there doing this, it is Vancouver has had a lot of serial killers back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Okay. A lot of serial killers. And I think that they just don't want to bring out that news that, hey, to put panic into people.
Right. Yeah, we've certainly seen that play out many times where you start talking about a possible serial killer and people freak out. It also makes them feel not safe in their hometown. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Stetson John, how you doing? We've got about 40 seconds. Big thank you to Tim, to Apollo, to Chad Smith, not Chad Scott, he doesn't exist, to Jenny, Wayland, Ann ×2, Snakes, Dave, Sally, and Ed for the amazing super chats tonight. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, and we appreciate each and every one of you who continue to support this show. And thank you to all the veterans listening in, and of course all of our regulars who are here nightly supporting us. We love you all, and thank you so much. Hello, gorgeous Elaine M. How are you? Good morning to you, and we're going to get going here and in about 5 seconds. I love your new name, Chad. I love your new name. Here we go. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter @Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Mike Ricksecker. He's a good friend of this show, one of the top paranormal supernatural writers, authors going right now. He's an award winner. He's got a great site called Haunted Road Media. He's been on Travel Channel's Alaskan Triangle. This man does it all. I don't know how he does it, but he always has fantastic hair when he does. Mike, welcome back.
Oh, jeez. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that.
What am I supposed to do? I got to give a compliment when a compliment is due. You know what? One of the things...
It's just a brush. I don't know what to say.
Well, that's at least brushed 100 times in that part right there, because that's tight. There's not even a hair out of place there. Is that natural color, by the way?
It's natural color, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I wish. I went gray started going gray at 25. It's terrible.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Terrible.
No, I've been very fortunate. I just turned 47 the other week, and my best friend, who's only like a year older than me, he looks like Santa Claus.
Yeah, I know that feeling. We had our son when I turned 40, so he's 8 years old now, and last year, first time ever, I got approached as grandpa.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
okay.
No, I'm not at that age. Please. Yeah, well, apparently I am. But that's okay. Moving on here, as we're not going to play the age game here anymore. Alaska has, as I look at a giant daddy long-legged spider sitting on my window right now. That is gross. But nonetheless, Alaska has, of course, a lot of legends around the sea. I mean, those seas up there in the Bering Strait, we only get a taste of it from the Discovery Channel when they put on their crab fishing shows. But, I mean, they've lost a lot of people, a lot of ships, a lot of sailors up there with that. How many times have you heard the legends of the waters up there?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting legends about what's gone on in the waters of Alaska. A lot of shipwrecks, ghost ships, just all these crazy stories. There's one that's really interesting. We did not cover it in season 1 of the Alaska Triangle. I think they might be covering it in season 2, but don't quote me on that. And that's the Clara Nevada. And this particular ship, this was during the the late 1890s. It was during the Klondike Gold Rush, and all of these ships were coming up out of Seattle, into Alaska, carrying supplies to the Klondike, passengers up into that area, and so they'd stop off in Alaska and make the trek into the Klondike area in Canada. And they were the types of ships that they were retrofitting. They were finding these old wrecks and basically piecing them back together because there was just such a rush to head on up there. And the Clara Nevada was one of these that was kind of quickly put back together, renovated a little bit, and they loaded it up, and it on its way to Skagway. And they were having a heck of a time with this thing, where it was, they were crashing into docks when they'd get to different ports, and just all kinds of nutty stuff was going on with this thing. But after it loaded up in Skagway and started heading back out, all of a sudden the thing exploded. Basically, it just became this big orange fireball, and there was speculation over the years as to what in the world happened to this thing. It's the wreck of it is near the Eldred Rock Lighthouse. At the time, the lighthouse wasn't there. And the reason why they built the lighthouse was because of wrecks like this that happened. But people don't really know what truly happened to this thing. Now, there was a legend that there was all this gold on there that they were shipping back down out of the Klondike. And so there are different legends of murder and robbery and all these different things with the Clara Nevada. And as historians started looking into this accident, they were discovering, now there was only one body that was ever found, but they're discovering that like the captain of the ship and some of the passengers actually made it out alive, even though nobody found them at that time. Like years later, the captain shows back up. Years later, a couple of people that had been on the ship showed up back home in Indiana. Some of these bizarre stories. There's the Princess Sophia, which was nicknamed the Titanic of Alaska, in which it's headed out of where was it? Was that headed out of Seward? But it was around the same area, because this was all like around the Lynn Channel, and it was basically the last voyage of the season for that. The captain was a very seasoned captain. He had run this route many times, and all of a sudden, for some inexplicable reason, he ends up off course, crashes into the Vanderbilt Reef, and it was a day and a half later, because they were trapped on top of the reef. There was a snowstorm that had kicked up, so nobody could come and rescue them because the waves were crashing against the reef. And if you tried to take a rescue boat over there, that boat would have crashed too. So they had to kind of wait it out, and then the ship ended up sinking. So what ended up happening, that he veered so far off course, especially being as seasoned as he was. And so a lot of people speculate that it was the Alaska Triangle that was interfering with the with the compasses and with the electronic equipment there in the ship, that they were getting a different reading than what they should have, and ended up off course like that. So a lot of crazy, bizarre stories up there when it comes to ships.
Do people see a lot of ghost ships in the night now, or during the day?
People have reported, the one that they see, or that have been reported, it's been some years since they've reported that, but the one was the Bay Chimo. And this one was on the northern part of Alaska, and this was a ship that, again, another crazy story in which it kept getting stuck in the ice up there. It was because you're up there so far north, and it wasn't uncommon. But the crew decided, after this had happened a couple times, that the boat wasn't going to take it anymore. So they abandoned the thing. They took off the supplies and abandoned it. It ended up drifting off into the water for a while, and so people would periodically see this boat on the water, and this was like for 40 years. It was a completely unmanned boat, and so there became stories as to, okay, are we actually seeing the boat itself on the water? Because this has been some years now that this thing should have sunk and been done with. Or are we seeing an actual ghost ship on the water? So, there's definitely bizarre stuff.
Mike Ricksecker is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Is there a lot of legends out there about the storms? Like in the Great Lakes, we hear about, Gordon Lightfoot singing about the Witch of November come early that took down, the ship, the Edmund Fitzgerald. Do we get a lot of those types of legends up in Alaska as well?
Yeah, it's those type of things. What took down some of these ships? So the Princess Sophia is the big one up there, and you have so many of these wrecks up there that it was just too much to count, and that's why there was such an outcry for putting in lighthouses up there, which happened around the turn of the 20th century. But even then, like there's this bizarre story of Eldred Rock Lighthouse, which is where the wreck for the Clare Nevada is, that a couple of the attendants of the lighthouse, a couple of the assistant keepers, had just gone out just on a regular boat trip they would help service some of the other lighthouses in the area. So they go out to service the one lighthouse, head out to one of the small towns that's in the area, and then head back to Eldred Rock Lighthouse, which is where they were stationed. And all of a sudden they went missing, and just out of nowhere. How did that happen? These are, again, seasoned guys. This was not a difficult trip to make. It was not a bad time of year, but all of a sudden they went missing, and days later, all of a sudden there's their boat found washed up on the shore. It's just, what in the world happened to these guys?
Oh man, and that would be one place that you don't want to go, or you don't want to die, because that water, it's so cold up there that you only have literally a couple minutes before you go into full-on hypothermic shock and die.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is freezing cold up there. You do not want to get caught in that water.
No.
You don't have much time.
All right, let's get to a question from Vinny. Has anything ever appeared in the triangle instead of disappearing?
That's an interesting question. Trying to think of a instance in which that has happened. You do hear about like remnants of some of these different wrecks or accidents that have happened where they can't find them for so long, and then all of a sudden there's a body. Finally, we find a body, but it's been such a long time. How did we miss the body before? And now there it is. So you get that sort of thing. But I know the question is one of those, just kind of out of nowhere, something showing up. And off the top of my head, I can't think of one specifically like that.
Could you consider maybe that UFO for Japan Airlines Flight 1680 being one of them?
Yeah, that one's really interesting. Because even with, because I even got a United flight involved with that to try to confirm it, and then all of a sudden the thing disappeared. But the Air Force had kind of manipulated that whole situation to try to get that confirmation. And I guess what had happened was that the UFO, when that other airline, that other plane showed up, the UFO had snuck in behind it, and so all that was observed, and that one was kept under the table. They didn't want that information related, but that one went on for several minutes, and you had several witnesses to that as well. And what's interesting is that the Reagan administration had brought a scientific team into that situation to examine what had happened. They were really, really excited about it, but the CIA put the kibosh on the whole thing.
That flight, with the pilots from Japan Airlines, it was a cargo 747 delivering goods across North America and heading over to Japan. They were suspended from their jobs with pay and basically lost their wings for reporting this. But I do believe in that specific case that those that aircraft was actually brought down into Elmendorf, where the pilots got pretty much put into interrogation over what they saw. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, and that's not uncommon either. For a variety of different reasons. So, for one, they want confirmation of what these guys actually saw, and then two, they're of course going to try to scare them so that they don't tell the story to the public. But they did, at least to a degree, and yeah, I mean you're talking about pilots that were very reputable. This guy had a sparkling career, and all of a sudden this incident happens, and of course you're going to have the mainstreams try to say that he's crazy, but no, this guy was on the up and up. But you see in a lot of these different cases, they're going to interrogate these guys about exactly what they saw, when they saw it, what it looked like. They want. The government and the military, they want as much information about these things as they can, and then as they get that information out of them, they're also going to basically scare them and try to threaten them. You're not going to say this, that, or the other thing about these different incidents.
All right. Tony is asking, getting back to ghost ships for a minute. Are ghost ship reports, are they the older ones with sails, or more modern type ships that people are seeing?
So the ones up there in Alaska, most of these are like your old steamers. They have the smokestacks and all that. So these are a lot of these ships were built. I'm trying to think. The Clara Nevada was built 1870s. The Bay Chima was built early 1900s. But they were steamers.
So weird. I don't know how I'd react to seeing a ghost ship. I'll stick with the UFOs. Much more. Aiden is wondering, have you ever heard about the monster of Lake Iliamna?
Yeah, we're talking about that a little bit earlier. So that's basically the Loch Ness Monster of Alaska. And the footage from that with it kind of almost looks like a big, long snake in the water. But it's really fascinating.
How often is that creature seen?
Periodically throughout the year. Watch the Alaska Triangle episode on that when you see that footage of the thing slinking through the water. That's just fascinating. But yeah, several times a year people report seeing it.
Are you sure it's not a sturgeon? There's some big sturgeon up there.
This thing is tubular. I mean, it looked like a giant snake in the water, so it certainly wouldn't be a sturgeon.
Or fish? Or is it freshwater?
This is freshwater.
Aliens? It's always aliens.
Well, hey,
here.
a lot of people say the octopus is an alien.
Very true. Very true, Mike. But, with all the strange and weird that is happening up there, whether it's on the coastline where the majority of the population is, or whether it's inland, have you talked to anybody up in Alaska that has any sort of idea of what may be going on? Because a lot of the people who go missing in that triangle area, we're not talking about, the average citizen who goes out on a hike on the local mountain and disappears. We're talking about experienced outdoors people here.
Right, yeah, you have a lot of outdoorsy people that go hiking out there, and a lot of them are very seasoned. So, I mean, there's a lot of different speculation. We've kind of talked a little bit about it. Was it something that happened with a cryptid? Could it be some sort of, are these alien abductions? Because there is a lot of UFO activity that happens up there, and I think you're right. They probably feel a little bit more free to roam around up there because they're not going to be noticed as much since the population is so sparse. So, does that make it ripe for alien abductions alien abductions up there? That's quite possible as well.
Are people up there afraid of the phenomena, or do they just think, much like anywhere you live, it just comes with the territory and you choose to believe it or not?
Yeah, I mean, most people go about their daily lives up there. They know that there's some unusual things that happen up there. They know that it happens up there more often than, say, down here. They're aware of that, but for the most part, they just go about their daily lives. Then all of a sudden, something happens.
What's your best guess?
As far as
just the way things are happening.
I mean, it's such a mix of different things. I think that there's something, kind of like what I mentioned earlier with the activity, the electromagnetic activity that's occurring up there. I think that's a big draw. That's a big attractant to a lot of this activity. I think it's generating a lot of it, especially with a lot of the more paranormal type of activity. You're going to be seeing a lot more of that up there with that energy that's up there. But I think it attracts a lot of this other phenomena. I think that's a very attractive component for UFOs. That whether they feed off of this energy or it's just it maybe it's some sort of indicator that this is an area that we can work with for whatever purposes that they're here for. I think that, like we kind of mentioned it before with the owls, that type of energy attracts them. So is that why the cryptids are more attracted to the area? That there's something about that energy that is conducive to them, and it's something that's attracted to them. That this is a place where I want to be. The ancients felt that type of energy. That's why they built their temples on locations like that. Now, we don't see ancient temples in Alaska, or maybe they're under the ice. We don't know, but you look at other locations around the world, like with the pyramids or Stonehenge and locations like that where we see these large temples or pyramids or things like that built. It's because the ancient people knew that energy was there and they wanted to harness that. Well, I think the same thing's happening up there in Alaska. We just don't have that ancient architecture, but these other entities, or whether it's the cryptids or the extraterrestrials, they're attracted to it. They feel that energy, and so they're trying to harness that.
We got 2.5 minutes before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Mike Ricksecker is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Question from George in the chat room. Are these ghost ships related to the airships phenomena of the turn of the century, in your opinion?
The airships of the turn of the century. I think they're related as far as why airplanes have gone missing. I think is related to why these ghost ships have had so many problems, like with the Princess Sophia, with them being so far off course. And I think this happened with a lot of these other ships as well, that their gauges have just been so far off that they these captains aren't stupid. They're the captain of these ships for a reason, and a lot of these are seasoned veterans. They've been doing this for a long time, so they know how to read their equipment, but somehow it's off. So I think it's related in that their equipment malfunctions, they end up off course, and unfortunately, accidents end up happening, because of these things.
All right, so next hour, I want to get into the one topic we haven't talked about yet tonight. How haunted is Alaska? I mean, we can't go a night without ghost questions for you.
Right.
Did you get a chance to sneak in a few investigations when you were up there?
I was really young at the time, so I wasn't doing full-fledged paranormal investigations. I mean, I did have experiences up there. My first paranormal, quote-unquote, paranormal investigation was when I was 15, so I was already familiar with it, but I wasn't investigating like that. I was kind of more in research and learning mode at the time, but I did have quite a few experiences up there, and we can certainly talk about that next hour.
I'm looking forward to it, man, because you're just so knowledgeable on all of this type of information that you are letting out for us on the Alaskan Triangle or anything along those lines. I mean, you live a geek's life if you're a geek like us, for getting into this. And I definitely appreciate it. I know our audience does, as well as we have Mike Ricksecker for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. And we're going to talk some ghosts of Alaska. We'll take your questions as well. If you're in one of our chat rooms or on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. HauntedRoadMedia.com is his website. And you can get all of his books there or online. We love him around here. Mike Ricksecker, The Alaskan Triangle, continues on Spaced Out Radio right after this. Just going to take a bathroom break. We got about 6 minutes, okay? Be right back. I got to find those spiders, too. There was a second one. Where do you go? I don't know where the hell they are. It's crawling on my foot. Get over here. You got to go outside, man. Gotta go outside. All right. I have returned. I'll unmute Mike. Go there. And I know we have a few questions here for you as well, Mike, so I will get those ready. And once again, just stick with me right through the when we go to break, and I'll say a proper goodnight to you.
Okay, sounds
during
good.
the break, and go from there. Quick show, man. Very
yeah,
quick
it's gone
show.
by fast. Yep.
As they always do with you. They always do. I don't know why.
No, we just have a lot to talk about, and just boom, it just goes.
For sure, man. I think we should do a Halloween show with you as well, and kind of break down like your top 20 hauntings that you've covered in your books. If you're up for that.
Yeah, we could do something like that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll get you some dates for Halloween area, and that would be cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right, here we go in 15 seconds. Let's have some fun here.
All right.
Thank you to everybody on the Super Chats tonight. Really appreciate the love and support of SOR. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Kicking off the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. All you got to do is go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Sacralgia. Sacralgia is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as a clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce author, Ghostorian, TV guy, Mike Ricksecker. His website, hauntedroadmedia.com. If you want to check out his books, you can find them there or online. Mike, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, always great to be here, Dave. It's been like we were talking about, it's been a very fast show. So
it really has.
Yeah.
Really has. And I'm sure you're glad for that because you're on the East Coast. So
yeah, it's getting a little late here.
No kidding. No kidding. Let's start off with a question from Simon. How has all of this phenomena affected your life?
Wow. Well, it's been a big part of my life. You know, I had experiences going all the way back to when I was a kid, but you know, Alaska specifically, this was a very influential time of my life. You know, I was just out of high school, I was newly in the Air Force. I got thrust up there into Alaska. And I didn't think while I was up there that, you know, those 3 years were going to have such a significant impact on my life. And yeah, and even like today, you know, because of, you know, different strange things that have happened, like the opportunity with the Alaska Triangle show. Now I'm writing a book. I have all these fantastic stories to tell people. And so it's like, you know, when the topic of Alaska gets brought up, it's like, yeah, I spent 3 years up there, and all of a sudden, you know, here come all the stories. So, I never thought that would be, you know, something that would happen to me. But then you look at everything else that I've you know, witnessed and done over the years. You know, I would not be me without all the phenomena that I've been involved with.
Incredible. All right. Let's get to another question here. Aiden is asking, do you think some of the sightings up in Alaska of thunderbirds are actually dire gray owls?
Interesting question. I mean, I suppose some of them could be not being there to witness a Thunderbird. I couldn't tell you, but could some of them have been misinterpretations of what they were seeing? I mean, we could say that about a lot of phenomenon. Are some of the, when you look at chupacabra sightings, are they, the misinterpretation of a sickly coyote? It could be. It's hard to say without being there and witnessing that specific incident.
All right, another interesting one. I'm not sure you'll know if you know too much about this or not. Low Pro is asking about Magnetic Mountain Maru in the north of Alaska, and if you have an opinion on it.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that specific mountain. A lot of my research has been like Mount Hayes, of course, different things around the like the Anchorage area. Things like that. So I haven't really done a lot with Mount Maru yet.
How haunted is Alaska?
Definitely a haunted state, for sure. I mentioned before being stationed in at Elmendorf, but specifically in the Alaska Command Building. What was very interesting there, and I had some experiences there in at one of the several apartments I lived in up there. So what we frequently saw down there in this basement was some sort of shadow entity. Did not talk about this one in my book, A Walk in the Shadows, but it is getting talked about in my Alaska Triangle book that's coming out. And we weren't sure exactly what this was. It hung out mostly because our area that we were at, there was an office area, and then there was like the server rooms, and there was the comm center area. So what we did, we were originally Worldwide Military Command Control Systems. We ended up switching to Global Command Communication Systems after a couple of years. So that was our area of, I guess, that office area, for lack of a better term. And then there was the comm center area, which they were kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of like messenger boys, couriers, that sort of thing, for some of the command. So we shared a space with the servers. We didn't really see the shadow over there, although there was one creepy room in the back that the lights were never on. It was mostly in the office area, which was kind of interesting. And there were these rumors that the building had once been a hospital, and that this area down there was the morgue from that hospital. And that's why we kept seeing this thing down there. But doing research of that building, it was never a hospital. It's only ever been a command building. So now looking back on it, it's like, what in the world did we actually see? Why were we seeing this shadow entity down there? And so this almost kind of goes back to the idea of a time slip with that energy down there. Is there something that's charging the area so that we're seeing, the people that worked down there years ago? Maybe we're seeing people in the future that were working. We're just getting a glimpse through these shadows. It's kind of hard to know. Aside from that, there are a lot of places downtown Anchorage that that have hauntings. A number of the hotels down there, like the historic Anchorage Hotel, has a lot of history to it. There's shooting there. Was one of the police chiefs was involved in that. But you hear this, so people see him there, kind of outside the building. But inside the building, there's a legend of the woman dressed in a very elegant gown that's been seen within there. The Captain Cook Hotel has various hauntings. So you have a lot of paranormal activity through the entire downtown area. And again, this is an area that has seen a lot of significant physical activity. When the earthquake of 64 or 65, it was a massive earthquake that hit, and basically, the streets were, there was like a 15-foot gap between the streets. It uplifted the land that much, and so they had to kind of terraform downtown because of this. So you have this significant seismic activity down there that. When you have those large releases of energy, they could charge areas like this. So, yeah, definitely a very haunted state.
The ghosts there, are a lot of them from the Klondike Gold Rush era?
Some of them are. The Princess Sophia, that accident was that was just after that era, and the bodies from that accident were basically laid out in basements of buildings in Juneau, and there are stories today of people seeing apparitions of people from that accident in and around those buildings. So, so you see activity related to that. People talk about the shipwrecks, like we talked to Clara, Nevada before, and other shipwrecks around that time. People claim to see those people, especially around the Eldred Rock Lighthouse. So that would have been related to the Klondike Rush. So, yeah, there's certainly paranormal activity related back to that time.
My goodness. That would be awesome. Because the funny part about it is the original Gold Rush Trail, which goes right up to Alaska, is literally about 3/4 of a mile from my house.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
that's where the story I told you the first half hour about the Chinese couple that we were able to communicate with, that's where that incident happened. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I got a question from Sasquatch here for you. Do you think HARP has any relation to the triangle?
It's an interesting question because, of course, HARP is up in that area, and we had some antenna arrays down there on Elmendorf that they wouldn't admit that they were related to HARP, but we know that they're related to HARP. So does that play a part into all of this, or is it that HARP is using the energy that's there to help power their system? It could be a little bit of both. But a lot of this activity also happened prior to HARP. So I think even without it, even if HARP is contributing to it now, it would still be happening even without it.
Right on. Right on. As we continue on with Mike Ricksecker here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Ghosts, Bigfoot, other sorts of cryptids, sea monsters, everything going on. How much more do we need to pay attention about what's going on in Alaska with all of the strange and weird sightings?
I mean, I think we need to keep our eyes open up there for sure. Again, this is the last. They call it the last frontier. I mean, to me, space is the final frontier, kind of like from Star Trek, right? There's a lot more to explore out there, but on Earth, it's Alaska, parts of Russia with Siberia and all that, and then Antarctica. I think there are a lot of answers we're going to find down in Antarctica as well, and I think we're going to find some relationship between Alaska and Antarctica. If you look back in history and you see the pole shifts, you'll see that there's some relation there for sure. But I think there's a lot more that we're going to discover up there as the years go on, and whether the government's going to try to harness that energy up there, whether it's related to UFO, and how involved is the government in the UFO activity up there. I think we especially need to keep an eye on that, especially with all this. We clamor for disclosure, and what we were fed back in June from the government was nothing. So we're still a very dissatisfied community.
Very true.
When it comes to disclosure. So I think we need to keep an eye out for that. When it comes to, and MUFON does a pretty good job of keeping up on the sightings up there. But I think everybody needs to keep their eyes open for those different reports out of Alaska.
Mike, a lot of people also believe that Alaska is a home to maybe some very secretive bases, where a lot of these black projects are taking off. It's not just Area 51 anymore. There's no people up in Alaska to really see these black triangles or these hypersonic aircraft leaving the area. Have you heard stories about that up in Alaska as well?
Yeah, Alaska is definitely an area for that because it's so remote. The one issue, of course, is the weather. That makes it quite difficult because of its remoteness. There are certainly special projects that they will conduct up there that it's easier to keep them hidden. So, I can't speak to specifically what, but at least during my time up there, I visited bunkers that people didn't even know were there. And again, it's kind of like you hear whispers and rumors, and okay, what exactly is true and what exactly isn't, you don't know. Especially since I was a young guy, and okay, they trying to draw me into a story, but that there are definitely secret areas up there that are being pretty closely held to the vest.
Very true. Best place to hide it is where there is nobody. Tony is asking, and this goes back to the last time we had you on the show, what do you think shadow beings are? Because you've done an entire series on shadow beings.
Yeah. Check out my series, The Shadow Dimension. You can watch it free on Tubi TV right now, and it's on several other streaming platforms as well. So that's a 6-part series. And then there's my book, A Walk in the Shadows. So that's like 300 pages on that question. So, shadow entities, I believe, are a variety of different things. Some of them are just human spirits that can't fully manifest as an apparition. What I think a kind of quote-unquote true shadow entity is a interdimensional being that has come here from some other plane of existence. Some shadow beings are extraterrestrials. Some are time travelers. We kind of already talked about that a bit here. Some may be astral projections, and you start getting into some other, what they could possibly be, like light beams and things like that. And people are like, light beams? It's like, well, yeah, stare at a light bulb long enough, and what do you start seeing? You just see the silhouette and not the light anymore. So, so they are a variety of different things. But like I said, kind of a quote-unquote true shadow person would be an interdimensional being.
How often have you interacted with them?
Quite a lot, actually. So that was my first significant paranormal experience when I was about 8 years old. Again, when I was 13, but later on as an adult, when I became a paranormal investigator, I was seeing them on a lot of different paranormal investigations. So, whether it was at an old hotel or somebody's house, I saw them quite often, and still do.
Dave Altman wants me to ask you about Portlock.
Not familiar with Portlock.
Me either. Thanks a little, Davey Altman. Appreciate that.
Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate him. He's a good guy. Sometimes. Simon is asking, what do you think is 100% real? After all you've studied, what case would you shout from a hill for?
What do I think is 100% real? There's so much stuff that I've seen. So, any of the stories that I've told of, what I've personally witnessed, like I talked about the quick shadow there at Johnny V's Muskogee, Oklahoma. One that I would definitely, because I had 5 people there that all saw the same thing, and that was the apparition of a little girl at Mineral Springs Hotel in Alton, Illinois, that basically morphed into an apparition out of shadow smoke. So basically, it started at the end of the hall as it looked like black smoke, like almost like something was on fire, and it was coming forward. This smoke, it started creeping up the right hand side of the wall. And as it was creeping up like that and coming closer, it ended up morphing into the apparition of this little girl. And there were 5 of us there that saw her. We all saw her a little bit differently, too. Like, I saw her mostly from She was fully formed at the head. On down, she started fading away at the knees, where others saw her more like from the feet up. And that basically talks to, we each have a different, personal resonance, where each resonated at a little bit of a different frequency, which is why we all saw her a little differently. But in that incident, it's like, okay, we're all standing there, we're seeing her, we're interacting with her. So yeah, absolutely, that one was real.
All right, the Portlock incident is an incident in Alaska where apparently an entire village was killed by Sasquatch.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to research a little bit more on that. I'm not familiar with that. All killed by Sasquatch.
Yeah,
I wonder why I have not heard of that.
It's very, very interesting. We're going to have to find somebody to track that down, because that is a cool story, man. We only have about 3.5 minutes left with you tonight in the show that is once again flown by here, as it normally does with you. What projects are you going to do for the remainder of the summer here?
Yeah, so, I have a number of different events that are coming up. So some different Paracons, like Michigan Paracon, Massachusetts. I'm going to be in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and Vulture City. But as far as projects that I'm working on, I just had everything that, the Egypt tour that I just did. And so I've released a lot of that information, those videos. I had like a whole 14-day travel blog on my my learning site, which is connecteduniverseportal.com. And you can get into all of that on the member site, which is 30-day free trial. But what I'm doing, because some people have wanted just the Egypt information, like they don't want the whole membership access, they just want Egypt. So I'm going to be releasing that here in the next couple days. Just explore Egypt with Mike Ricksecker. So that's coming out here very soon. And then, of course, the Alaska Triangle book.
That's awesome. Anne is wondering, she's with KPNL, who broadcasts us digitally. She is asking, Mike, when was your last paranormal experience and what happened?
Oh, that's a good question, because there are some things that go on here in the house like all the time. So, there's something moving around in the pantry the other day, but probably Egypt. There is so much energy there in Egypt, and it's hard to say specifically paranormal, but it's one of those where in the Great Pyramid, where I was totally drawn to the box that's there in the King's Chamber. A lot of people call it a sarcophagus, but it was not. And as I'm sitting there looking at it and examining it, it was more like, again, this is something that's not going to be like ghostly or whatever, but I would say supernatural, because it was almost like an epiphany type moment as I'm sitting here looking at the construction of that box. And I'm calling in like Mohammed, our tour guide, who's been doing this for 20 years, and he's extensively researched it. I'm pointing different things out to him, and he's like, I have never looked at it from that perspective before. It was like kind of like a revelation. So I'm going to be coming up or putting out more information about that here soon. So that to me was, again, not quite paranormal, but it was, I was connecting with something there in the King's Chamber for sure.
Very cool. Tell everybody how they can find you. You have 40 seconds.
Yeah, okay. You can find me MikeRicksecker.com, like Dave said, HauntedRoadMedia.com as well. Please check out the ConnectedUniversePortal.com. That's where I'm directing a lot of people these days for the learning site. And, of course, you can find all my books on Amazon.com as well. And please check out the Shadow Dimension docuseries on Tubi TV.
Really appreciate you, Mike. It's always a pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio, my friend. You're a good one, and keep up the great work, because we need more Mike Rickseckers out there than we do all the other showboats out there. That's for sure. You're doing great, and continued success with your work.
Thanks again, Dave. I always appreciate being on your show. We always have a good time.
Absolutely. Mike Ricksecker, everybody, HauntedRoadMedia.com. Coming up next, we have the SOR Newswire, as Captain Shirk has us all prepared. and the thought of the day. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah. Thanks again, Dave.
Thank you so much, and always appreciate you staying up late. I will get some dates to you here very soon about October, and then we'll just say pick your top 20 haunted stories that we could talk about, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. We'll do it.
All right, buddy. You take care.
All right. Yep. Have a great night.
Take care. See you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Mike Ricksecker, everyone. Mike Ricksecker. I'm Chad Smith. Thank you, Ozzy Steve, for that awesome super chat. Really do appreciate that, man. The Shadow Dimension on Tubi TV. Fabster, your head cannot fit in a pyramid. Can't. Impossible. Is that better? Yeah, that's better. It's impossible for your head to fit on TV there, Fabster. Or in an Egyptian crypt. Can you imagine Fap trying to board a train or a plane? There is no way that could happen. Not that high. No, I don't want it that high. Try there. That's better. All right. Hey, Raul, I don't know when you felt that this has become a political chat room, but you might be in the wrong chat room tonight, man. Seriously. Not sure quite what's up with you, man. You know we don't talk COVID. You know we don't talk politics. And yet you're doing that tonight. So, and you've done it for the previous few nights. I love you, man. Love it when you're in, but not sure what's up with you lately, but you're bringing it into the chat room. This is a release, man. This is a release for everybody to get away from all the bullshit every day that they see in the mainstream media, and that's what we do here. We're not into the other crap. Not into it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of forest fire smoke. I'm breathing that crap in. Tired of politics. I'm tired of everything. So let's just keep it on the woo. We can all enjoy it a little bit better and have a good time, man. So I appreciate you tuning, and let's just hang on in. Have some fun. All right. Let's see that. All right, we've got about 45 seconds. A big thank you to Ozzy, Steve, Anya, Tim, Apollo, Chad, Jenny, Waylon, Ann ×2, Snakes, Dave, Sally, and Ed for the amazing super chats tonight. Really do appreciate it. Yeah. Duke, pass that on to Filth at bookings@spacedoutradio.com. Bookings@spacedoutradio.com. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to say hello to everyone listening in around the world, tuning us in, and remind you that you could check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio and on Instagram @SpacedOutRadioShow. Speaking of the news, let's do this thing. News is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and the ufological. A woman has taken to TikTok claiming that she found a UFO in her back garden. TikTok user Allie posted a video that she had filmed in her backyard showing her followers what she believed to be a UFO. She addresses her followers saying, "If anybody from Conspiracy TikTok is here, I think you'd be interested in the UFO I just found in my backyard." The video, of course, has amassed 2.3 million views, over 300,000 likes, and over 1,600 comments. Of course it has, because that's important in today's age. Users have been flooding to the comment section to post their theories around what the unidentified object could possibly be, with one suggestion: it was the top of a water tank or silo. And the comment says, "I don't want to burst your bubble, but storm shelters in the south, some of them look just like this." A third said, "Just a satellite TV dish from the late 90s, which that's what it does look like, to be blunt." Allie has since updated her followers on her findings, posting a second video of the discovery to give her followers a better look at it. In it, she notes how the object has some weird graffiti on it, which looks peculiarly like a Mario Kart mushroom. She described how it is completely out there in the middle of nowhere and that there is nothing for a mile in any direction. She goes on to show her followers what they were waiting for, a better look inside of the alleged UFO. However, unfortunately, no aliens can be seen, just rocks and water due to it being monsoon season. Allie does note a mysterious hole, however, which she doesn't have access due to the water. Allie later posted a third video in which she admits to her followers that she knows for a fact it's not an actual UFO, but that she would sooner believe it was a UFO than a satellite. She asked her followers to help her out because she wants to find out what is in the hole. Now, most followers seem to think that the presence of the hole confirmed that strange object status as some sort of silo or water tower, while the object still has not been fully identified. If it was really a UFO, you'd think that any alien would be such a big fan of Mario Kart that they would graffiti a mega mushroom on the vehicle. I highly doubt it. They are definitely going for something else, like Howard the Duck. All right. Earlier this summer, the Office of the Directors of National Intelligence released a much-publicized 9-page report titled With Deliberate Blandness, Preliminary Assessment Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. Although the report was requested by Congress, in many ways it was the culmination of a 3.5-year public attention to military reports regarding UFOs. ODNI didn't use the acronym UFO, which dates back to the 50s, instead choosing the brighter, happier UAP. Military intelligence officials have consistently framed these mysterious incidents in terms of national security. So why do all the press and social media keep bringing up aliens? Because for better or worse, sightings of unidentifiable things in the sky have become inextricably linked to visitors from outer space. Aliens are now default explanation for such events, and the reason is no accident. For nearly 75 years, people have worked hard to make it the default. So what's going on here? What is happening? Most people, though, didn't take it possibly seriously about it. Opinion writers tended to think that the U.S. or the Soviet Union were testing experimental rockets, and these are the answers for what is going on. It goes all the way back to the 1947 event with Kenneth Arnold and the flying saucer flap. When, then, should we make of this most recent report, or what should we make of it? Does it add anything new to the long history? The answer is no. No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, the document is thin on details, only goes back to 2004, and only has examined 144 incidents, 143 still allegedly unexplained. The most worrying UAP episodes from national security-minded readers involved 18 outlier instances in which it was reported that the object displayed unusual flight characteristics. Yep, we know that. So ODNI's preliminary report does break some new ground, however, doesn't really answer much, and it's about time that people are starting to realize this. She ain't afraid of no ghosts, but she should be afraid of rickety roofs. A ghost hunter taking part in a paranormal investigation fell through the roof of an abandoned Buffalo Central terminal in Buffalo, New York. The 35-year-old woman and her fellow Ghostbuster were on a substation roof near the back of the property when it caved in and she fell more than 5 meters, so 5 times, about 18 feet, almost 20 feet. Officers and paramedics responded to the rescue call shortly after 10:30 p.m. The woman was treated at the scene before being taken with multiple injuries to the local hospital. The man with her, not injured whatsoever. The 2 ghost hunters were there without permission. Of course they were there without permission. But police said no charges have been filed. Despite a train not passing through the terminal in more than 40 years, the 92-year-old building is run by a non-profit that continues to host public events there each year. But the station also attracts ghost hunters and those interested in all things supernatural. The series Ghost Hunters was filmed there, and the non-profit has hosted ghost tours in the past. You know, this is exactly why ghost hunters have a very poor reputation. Very poor reputation. Once again, this is something that could have easily been handled. But no, they're going to do their own thing, and they're going to give the entire area and phenomena and people involved, like Merle, a black eye because a couple of morons want to break into a building for a ghost hunt. Too bad. I wish there was a way to regulate this field, because it would probably eliminate half of the morons out there that are just there to do their own thing and don't care about the consequences or the private property. How hard is it? Just ask. And if they say no, find someplace else to get your ghost on. Weird. A Frontier Airlines passenger was taped to his seat after he allegedly groped and assaulted flight attendants during a Miami-bound flight from Philadelphia last week. The 22-year-old was arrested at Miami International Airport. Authorities arrested Maxwell Wilkinson Berry of Ohio and charged him with 3 counts of misdemeanor battery, according to a Miami-Dade police report. He had 2 drinks while on the flight and ordered a third, police said. He allegedly brushed an empty cup against the backside of a female flight attendant who told him not to touch her, according to officials. He later spilled a drink on his shirt, went to the bathroom, exiting shirtless, police said. A flight attendant helped him get another shirt from his carry-on. After walking around the plane for about 15 minutes, he began to get friendly with another female flight attendant and allegedly grabbed her breasts, according to the report. He then put his arms around both female flight attendants and allegedly groped their boobage. Yeah. A male flight attendant then was called to watch over Barry, who then punched the man in the face. Man, this guy has problems. The flight attendant and nearby passengers restrained Barry with tape and a seatbelt extender, according to the report. Videos on social media showed Barry screaming expletives to the crew, and at one point claimed his parents are worth more than $2 million. Other clips showed Barry taking a swing at a male flight attendant and later being tied up with duct tape. Frontier initially said the flight attendants would be relieved of their flying pending completion of the investigation. Their statement triggered a response from Association of Flight Attendants Union President Sarah Nelson, who called the Frontier statement a knee-jerk reaction to a short video of the incident. If this is not immediately corrected, flight attendants may feel unsafe to come to work, Nelson said. Management has a legal duty to maintain a safe working environment for employees. Frontier later said in an updated statement provided to the media that the in-flight crew members are on paid leave, which is in line with an event of this nature. Frontier Airlines maintains the utmost value, respect, concern, and support for all of our flight attendants, including those who were assaulted on this flight. We are supporting the needs of these team members and are working with law enforcement to fully support the prosecution of the passenger involved. The incident is one of many customer-related disruptions since air travel has picked up during the pandemic. In June, the FAA said it has received more than 3,000 reports of unruly passenger behavior since the beginning of the year. It's real easy. Sit down, shut up, put your seatbelt on, and get to your destination where you can get all weird and strange. Come on. Beachgoers were evacuated from the sea after a report of a large marine animal in the water. Yeah, this happened in Bournemouth Beach. Lifeguards instructed swimmers to leave the sea at Boscombe Beach in Bournemouth while they were scanning the waters. Visitors took to social media and said there had been a huge shark sighting. Megalodon, maybe. I'm saying it's 9 out of 10 possibilities it was Megalodon. Yeah, the reports of the significant movement in the water, but lifeguards were unable to formally identify the animal. On Twitter, one woman said possible shark sighting at Boscombe Beach. Everyone called out of the water. Beachgoer Steve tweeted, I'm on the beach at Boscombe where the RNLI have had to red flag the beach due to reports of sightings of a shark. The lifeguard called out everyone out of the water. They discreetly referred to the sightings as a large, massive marine animal, so not to scare the children. Well, if your children are on social media checking this out, well, you got bigger problems than a shark in the water. He added it was very well handled. Visitors were able to re-enter the water 30 minutes later. The RNLI has asked members of the public to report any concerns about wildlife to the lifeguards as soon as they are spotted. And everything is status quo. Megalodon just taking a little breeze past the coastline there. Just say, hey, boys and girls, I'm hungry and I'm alive. A Florida woman received word prior to her 100th birthday that she is a Guinness World Record holder as the world's oldest competitive powerlifter. Tampa woman Edith Murway Traina, who is preparing to turn 100 on Sunday, was 98 years and 94 days old at the time of her last competition in 2019, earning her the Guinness record for the oldest female competitive powerlifter. Yeah, Murway Traina might soon break her own record as she is scheduled to compete in her first post-pandemic lifting competition in November. Murway Traina spent years as a dance instructor before friend Carmen Gutworth invited her, the then 91-year-old dancer, to join her at the gym, where she gained an interest in lifting heavy weights. While I was watching those ladies do their thing, I thought I just as well should pick up a few bars, and I did, she said. Going on a regular basis, I found that I was enjoying it, and I was challenging myself to get a little bit better and a little bit heavier in weights. Before long, I was part of the team, she said. Norway Trina lifts weights ranging from 40 to 150 pounds at her competitions, which have earned her so many trophies that she's run out of room for them in her home. As a performer and a dancer, applause was always a very important part of my enjoyment. As long as I could get a little bit of applause, I was happier each time I got more and more. Once people found out I was in my 90s and I was doing all of these things, it got to be more noticeable. People got to pay attention to me more. Good for her. Absolutely good for her. I couldn't do it. Nope. Finally tonight, a landlord in Connecticut has been arrested after he allegedly broke into a tenant's apartment and was caught on camera sniffing women's underwear. Who does this? Who does this? Vinny, Fap, do you know? Jorge Oriana Arias, 38 years old, was seen on hidden security cameras entering a tenant's apartment. The tenant first filed a report with police in May about her issues with Aurelia Arias, stating that he would go into her and her daughter's bedrooms and then go through their clothing. Why? It's disturbing. The woman told officers that as soon as she suspected someone was entering her home, she began barricading adjoining doors, but the landlord used another door to get inside. So the women set up hidden cameras around the apartment to prove someone was breaking in and pilfering through their belongings. She stated that the camera caught the man entering her apartment through a slide door before proceeding to both bedrooms where he would locate female underwear. The video, which was provided to officers, shows the man bringing female garments to his nose, apparently in an effort to sniff them. The woman also reported that he had even entered the home while her daughter was home alone, but he appeared to be startled when he saw her there and immediately left. Oriana Arias was arrested July 22nd, faces charges including third-degree burglary, and was released on $25,000 bond. He is scheduled to appear in court in September. Weirdo. Complete weirdo. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Day is as follows. What's the first thought you have that puts a smile on your face? We're going to go down under to Australia, where Science Melinda is going to kick things off. She puts a picture of her dog on Twitter. Opie, a Doberman with a love for the woo. He tunes into Spaced Out Radio daily whilst mutilating a plethora of cow ears. Hi, Opie. You're a handsome dog. Very handsome dog. Good for you for listening. You should meet Baxter in Canada. Maybe not. Baxter farts a lot. Terrible. Let's go to Meaty Toes, who says, the Leafs winning the Stanley Cup. In other words, I'm going to be forever sad. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And any other Leaf fans out there, you might as well go collect your chairs off of Yonge Street because the Leafs are not going to win the Stanley Cup for at least another 100 years. If that. Maybe 80. Mark Miller, my daughter always puts a smile on my face. That is true. You know, my little guy has been away for a few days with Grandpa and Grandma hanging on out, and he FaceTimed me today, and he in his big blue eyes, he's got these giant blue eyes, and he's like, Daddy, I miss you. And he started crying. And I was just trying to hold it together. I'm like, oh, my buddy, come on. You know, you're hanging out with Grandpa and Grandma. Everything's cool. And here I'm thinking, this kid's getting homemade pancakes every day. You know, he's getting, his grandma just takes good care of him. But I get it. Brain on the Waves says, it's always dogs. Dogs make me smile. Paul says, aliens make me smile. Mickle in a pickle. Fast cars and fast women, Dave. And let's go to Doc. My 59 Jeep CJ. Puts a picture of it on Twitter. I want this thing. Oh, that's beautiful. I just love Jeeps. Just love Jeeps. And let's go to Chris here. My son. Fair enough. Ronnie, the gorgeous Ronnie, says, Savannah, who looks like a Chihuahua, puts a smile on my face. Yeah, that's definitely a Chihuahua. It's wearing a sombrero. Beautiful. Beautiful little dog. I love pictures of dogs. I really do. John, picturing Meaty Toes actually wearing a disgusting hat. That's not nice. That's not nice. Leave Meaty Toes alone. He didn't do anything. All right. Let's go to Drew. My children always put a smile on my face. Danny, my dog Lemmy. I bet your Lemmy rocks. Plays a mean bass. Probably has a band called Motor Dog. Angela, people who get and appreciate my twisted mind. Isn't that the truth? Brent, that one time when I finally figured out what the SOR password is for. What is the SOR password for? Joe Monk in our chat room? Exactly. That's a riddle. See if you can figure it out. Scott, knowing. Knowing what? I don't know. He's secretive on it. Nikki, nature. Being surrounded by it, whether that's working in a garden, taking a walk in a forest, listening to birds chirping and singing, walking on a beach, swimming in the ocean, or sitting outside at night watching the sky and hearing the crickets or frogs. That's romantic. That's beautiful. Kara, eating breakfast for dinner. That's just disgusting. Horrible. Horrible. Who says that? Magnus. His cat makes him smile even though the cat hates him. Uncle Dale and his power stash. On a beach in Texas, Starship is about to go through dry fit-up testing with the super heavy booster. Love me some spacecraft. Amen, Uncle Dale. Amen. Barry, that I own a McLaren 765 LT Novatec car in black. And Alicia, easy. You, Dave Scott, I miss your face. I miss yours too. Never met. Orion, the stars early in the morning. Humanity makes Catherine smile. And the final one for tonight. Let's go to Jeannie. Cute baby bunnies. Thank you for everybody participating in the thought of the day. Thank you to Captain Shirk for the SOR Newswire and to Mike Ricksecker talking about the Alaskan Triangle. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your car, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight except FAP. On YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Facebook, Twitch, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night.